A person today that wants to take charge of their own health must look themselves in the mirror and realize it's up to me and the people I hang out with to learn how to do health, because the doctors and the people are not trained in that. We need to eat well, move well, sleep well, de-stress well, understand our genetics, understand hormones, understand peptides, understand supplementation, and put it all together and have a really cool superhuman life.
Welcome back to Born Superhuman. So, we're bringing back an incredible guest that we had before. The response was amazing to the information that he was sharing. And I saw a post recently, in fact, only yesterday, about a topic that I think really needs to be discussed. So, listen in because we're going to get to that later on in the podcast. But it's my honor and pleasure to welcome back Dr. Mark Sherwood.
Hey, Dan, thanks for having me, man. It's good to be back with you.
Oh, it's great to have that energy. And we had such a great discussion before. And I advise people, if you didn't listen to the first one, go listen to that as well, because there's so much dynamic mic drop information that can change your life. So we're going to talk today specifically about the health and wellness within our body, but focusing on peptides. So let's get into the discussion first. I know you know so much about peptides. And we talked a little bit about a post I saw yesterday about a regular Western doctor saying that peptides are bad for you. The side effects are dangerous. They haven't been tested and proven. And officially, that Big Pharma dropped out of testing it because they said that it was dangerous. Whereas we know the truth is they couldn't patent it and make money. So tell me what you know about peptides, the safety and the history.
Well, you look at peptides in general, and that blanket statement by that certain doctor was very responsible, because one of the earliest discovered, now utilized, which saves lives, peptides is insulin. Think about that, man. That's one of the earliest ones that were discovered that saved lives, because before that, when a person's pancreas, just died out and they weren't able to produce that peptide, insulin, people would die, of blood sugar issues, of course. One of the earliest peptide discoveries that a lot of people don't know was from Dr. Pavlov. Pavlov's dog, remember that? Pavlov discovered the peptide BPC-157 in the gastric acid of the dog. And so he began to research what that was, and the dog would secrete that to repair tissues and repair injuries and things like that. So turns out that peptides are nothing more or less than chains of amino acids between about 2 or 3 amino acids in length and up to about 50. From 50 to 100, it's called a polypeptide. And when it gets above 100 amino acids structured together, we're talking about proteins or hormones. So there's nothing unnatural about that. You could even reverse the process and say, well, are all peptides or all proteins and hormones made from peptides? If you reverse it, you would say, well, yes, of course it is, because it's all made out of the same bucket of material, those things called amino acids. So they're very natural. They've been around a long time, and context matters. Some of them have been approved, some of them haven't. But, and what does danger mean? I mean, there's all variability. It doesn't talk about dosages or usages. So there's a lot of subjectivity about that statement.
Yeah, it was fascinating because here we've got something that I personally use. We have something that we know real life results go far beyond scientific testing. Scientific testing endorses it. But when you've got thousands upon thousands of people having their life changed because specifically here peptides, and yet it's being dragged through the bushes because ultimately Big Pharma don't want you healing. This is my opinion, not on a conspiracy theory, but when you look back at places like Pfizer that have been around 125 plus years, billions of dollars in funding and haven't found one cure, but found thousands upon thousands of medications to keep you committed. What do you think the process is now for the general public to cut through the noise and confusion, understandable confusion, that would make them at least look into it more without the fear being generated?
I think we have to look at facts. Here's some facts. America, right now, is in the most unhealthy place it's ever been in the history of the world. You have more people on Big Pharma pharmaceutical drugs right now than you've ever had. And we're not getting better. Disease processes are becoming more consistent, more predictable, and it's not unusual for every American over age of 60 to be on 2 or 3 or 4 medications. On the flip side, it's highly unusual that someone's not. You've got a population that's addicted to antidepressants, so we're not happy about it either. So you look at all of that stuff. Those are facts, and facts tell a story. So when I look at Big Pharma and its methodologies, Dan, I look at them as complete ineffectiveness and failure. I facetiously refer to our CDC as the Centers of Disease Out of Control, right? And they really are, because we've done nothing to help our population. To make matters worse, as you transition from facts to speculation, which is nothing more than results of investigation, you could say that America's done a really good job of profiting off of sickness. Big deal. When you look at 90% of all of our healthcare expenditures in our industry being spent on disease processes that are highly correctable and avoidable, in other words, lifestyle diseases, we've got huge problems. Now, look at people today all across the globe, and whether I'm online or in person, I tell them just look at those facts. The government is not there to help you. Sorry to say that directly, but that's the truth, especially regarding our health. The way we fix this, the way we turn off that noise, is to stop listening to it and put it in its proper place. Our pharmaceutical industry is there. I'm not knocking big pharma as a whole because medications are probably necessary from time to time. Our system is good, but it's designed for acute care, emergency type situations, trauma. Medication should be used for the least possible time, for the shortest duration, with a clear exit strategy. And that's what the system is designed to do. That's what doctors are trained to do, prescribe medications based upon symptoms. So let them sit over there and do that thing. We need that. But a person today that wants to take charge of their own health must look themselves in the mirror and realize it's up to me and the people I hang out with to learn how to do health, because the doctors and the people are not trained in that. It goes back to common sense, biblical principles, and probably just wisdom, putting it all together. We need to eat well, move well, sleep well, de-stress well, understand our genetics, understand hormones, understand peptides, understand supplementation, and put it all together and have a really cool, well, use your term, superhuman life.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like yourself, I'm not anti-drug. I'm anti-dependency and I'm anti-replacement. If the body can produce it, and
Yep.
sometimes we need a kickstart, right? Your car battery doesn't start. You put it on a slow charge overnight, and as long as the alternator's working, you won't need to do it again. We
Right.
understand that, and our body's very similar in that way. But I saw yesterday a statement or a post that came out from RFK Jr. that said he's stopping the ease of giving antidepressant drugs.
Mhm.
And then I saw a post by Dr. Daniel Amen that a lot of people would know for brain health and his structure. And he said that more than 90% of psychiatric drugs, we're talking about the antidepressants, are prescribed by non psychiatric specialists. They
Yeah.
have no awareness in that. What's your take on RFK Jr.? Because we know there's been a big pushback on him because people say he's not a doctor. And yet we know he has so many top level advisors. He's taking the information, making a decision, and basically doing that. What's your thoughts on how things are changing there?
Well, one, I'm not conventionally trained in medicine either. I'm trained in naturopathy. Now I'm around my wife who's conventionally trained, so we work together and I understand it very well. And I've been through a lot of cross training courses and certifications. But here's the situation, and this is a hardcore truth. One does not need to go to medical school to learn how to take care of health, nor does having a medical degree give one any sort of special insight in how to avoid sickness. It's not like that. We need to think differently than that. We've put medicine on a pedestal, and that's what it is, medicine. And not to be defamatory, that's not the point. But here's the deal, it is nothing more than a system that trains people to prescribe drugs. If you want to take it one level further and be a little sinister, you could say, well, it's legalized drug dealing. And that would be all true. but it's not teaching anyone how to avoid being on drugs. So I appreciate RFK's sentiments about SSRIs. Just today, to that end, a person that we know that we're working with, the client, we have them go to their PCPs occasionally. Well, the PCP tells them, you need to be on an antidepressant. The reason? You've only lost 9 pounds over the last 2 months, and you should have lost more. That was the reason. And I responded just today to that person, you're doing great. Get off the scales, start measuring your percent body fat. I gave her a link to a device that we use. And really, I'm not a fan of SSRIs, SSNIs, anything like that. I am absolutely of the standpoint to believe that people need to learn to deal with life more effectively than rely on an abnormally system-wide name syndrome that is nothing more than an excuse and a code to get medicine paid for to that person that doesn't need it. Plus, we know the side effects of those things are detrimental, and all the commercials say it. You take this drug if you have suicidal thoughts and tendencies, you should stop. Tell your doctor immediately. But the doctor's the one that gave it to you. So, I'm with you. I think RFK has done a fine job. I think he's battling the very things we're talking about. I actually did talk to him one time way back when, before he was put in the position, and we're in all in alignment. He really believes it's a mess, and I think he's doing what he can, and I believe that we're making headway. And even with peptides, recently there's been a little bit of a cover pulled back, and some of the ones that they said no are now being investigated, studied right now for efficacy and use. So we're actually making some headway in those areas.
Yeah, my mother's a doctor, my grandfather was a GP, and I think there's been a change, not
Yeah.
because people changed, but the system changed, because people went into medicine because they wanted to make people better. And now, if you step outside the book or the box, you could lose your ability to practice.
Yeah.
You can get sued. So you stay in here. This is your lane. And I know so many doctors that are frustrated that they can't do more and can't help people. So again, this is not an attack on doctors
Mhm.
in any way whatsoever. It's just they're limited as to what they can do. And then it becomes money making for the system, which is money making for them. And it's
Yeah.
sad.
And just to that end, I know that intimately because my wife, she was a naturopath and, her story is well documented out there and through just miracles. I mean, she was able to get into medical school, become top of her class valedictorian in the osteopathic position area. And then just for giggles and grins, she took the MD boards and passed that too. She's got more initials after her name than we have in our names combined. One of the smartest people I know. But she got into the system, true story. And her system, her life is well documented in a movie called The Prayer List, by the way, out there. But she actually got fired from the medical system because, quote, her payer mix didn't match up and she wasn't doing enough procedures. So she got actually fired from the system because she was teaching people how to eat. And they took that as her not getting return visits, return prescriptions, refills, and all that as a bad thing. And of course, people built a relationship with her. And so that started, sort of a negative, but it turned out to be a positive because that kick out the door was the beginning of the Functional Medical Institute, which my wife and I now work together in. So, but the truth is, she was doing the right thing way back when. We said we were the biohackers before biohackers was. Before anybody knew what it was, we were doing functional medicine before people even knew what it was. And she lost her job because of it. But get this, she gained a career in calling because of that. And I think a lot of people need to go that direction. And now it's fascinating. A lot of clinicians come out and kind of copy our methodologies and protocols and just business practices. And the very people that used to bash us are now starting to copy us, which I find is ironic. It used to make me mad, but now I'm pretty happy about it.
No, and again, proof is in the pudding. At the end of the day, it's the old saying when back in England, I don't know if you have it in America, but
Yeah.
you can't dispel success.
No.
Opinions are relative to thought, but they're not relative to the actual facts. As you said, go back and check them. So let's go on to GLP-1s because that really, I think, was when you talk about insulin and talk about how it's been around, it was never seen as that way. We saw it
Yeah.
drug so people accepted it. And then we come out with the Ozempic and people are spouting out about how great it is. I'm losing weight. It's so good for me. But we know that not all numbers are true health success. So
Right.
take us away with GLP-1s and explain what they are. Before you do that, just explain to the listeners what's SSRIs, SSNIs, because
Yeah.
we can throw them out there and sometimes that confuses people.
Well, let's use SSRIs as just our working example. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. It doesn't mean that it's causing you to create more serotonin or that feel good brain chemistry. It means it inhibits the part of the neuron that takes that out of the synapse and makes it less available. So it kicks it out, and the synapse where it can be utilized by the brain, and then the neuron takes it back in. So the SSRIs stop it from being taken in, so it stays out longer. So it's not that people are born with serotonin deficiencies, as the story goes, but it's the belief system under big pharma logic, big medicine logic that, well, if they're depressed, they must need more of that. It needs to be around longer. And again, that thought process is dangerous because it makes something that's normal in and out, up and down, becoming an abnormal factor. And so that's what medicine does. You need to think about, okay, you do that, then what? And if you do that, does that permanently inhibit your serotonin reuptake? And the answer is possibly. So you become dependent? Same answer, possibly. So that's how those things work.
Yeah, again, there's a saying that I love that one of my mantras, which is the magic we seek is in the work we avoid.
Mm,
And we
good.
know that when it comes to serotonin, which isn't the whole reason why people are depressed, right? It's not just related directly to serotonin only, but the feelings that we get from getting up and exercising, from going out, from going
Yeah.
into a challenge, something we don't know we could achieve, but we work towards it and then we achieve it, even though that's also a dopamine release as the reward drug,
Yep.
the action of getting to that takes away so much of the depression. Yet when we're depressed, we don't want to do anything. And sometimes stop thinking about how you feel and get up and do it. And you'll be amazed how that feeling will change.
Yeah. The best thing people can do to avoid that cascade you're talking about, just go outside and go for a walk. I mean, straight up, the studies have shown that activity will metabolize adrenaline quicker than any antidepressant have ever thought about. So, there's that. And then we got the GLP-1s, a lot of controversy surrounding those. So, mechanism of action with those, people need to know this. So, the stomach is the size of a fist. So, people that can see this, I'm holding two fists up. This is the size of your heart. You pull one fist down, that's the size of your stomach. Earth-shattering breaking news, your stomach is not the size of a football or a basketball, even though we think it is, it's not. It's constructed of smooth muscle cells. So food goes into the GI tract by being chewed on, masticated, goes into the esophagus. It drops down through the esophageal sphincter into the stomach to start this digestion process to its next level capacity. And then from there, it goes down and eventually gets to small intestine, large intestine, now the colon, what we have left. But in the upper end of that process, when that stomach reaches its capacity and it starts to go south, the bolus and the food that's getting broke down, we get a chemical that's produced, which is a peptide called GLP-1 or glucagon like peptide 1. And it's sent to the brain to tell the brain, hey guys, hey, we're full down here. Turn off the signals that say I'm hungry. But here's the process and where it goes wrong with that normal physiological process. You grew up in a different nation, and you know that we behave differently in different nations regarding times and speeds at which we eat. You go to Europe and you're going to sit down for a meal and it may take you 2 hours. But in America, we've got the buffet and you can go through 2 rounds of that buffet in about 15 minutes, you're out the door in 30. We are in a hurry, we're highly stressed, and when you're stressed, cortisol going up, you don't digest anyway, so that phenomenon gets broken down further. Different subject, different day. But ultimately, it takes about 20 minutes for that signal to properly gear it up, get synthesized, and sent northward. And so therein lies the fundamental problem within American behaviors. So we come up with this brilliant invention, GLP-1 agonist, that would speed up that signal so that you cannot overeat even if you're eating in a hurry. And on paper, that sounds really, really good. And we've used it a lot under a unique contextual framework that works great. But at the same time, there's broad usages of those drugs out there, those peptides, that really I think are harmful. So it's like you got to know what you're doing with these things because we should not be looking at just weight loss. I've seen people lose weight and get more unhealthy. I've seen people gain weight and get more healthy. It's about composition, it's about digestion, it's about functionality, it's about nutrient density. So there's a bunch there, but that's just the mechanism of action of those things.
There was a lot that came out and people got very excited. And we know people want to jump on the train before it leaves the station.
Yep.
And as you said, within the use of the GLP 1s, there was a negative effect potentially on the body. And I do agree that we do look at the scale. And when you drop weight, it does become easier to move, but only if we're practicing movement.
Yep.
Tell me about the effect of just taking Ozempic, for example, not exercising, not changing your eating habits, not improving your quality of daily life, and expecting to become healthier.
It's going to be a disaster. You're going to crash your metabolism. You're going to lose muscle. You're going to gain fat. You're going to become nutrient deficient. You might see your hair thin, and you're probably going to shorten your life. Those are the facts. And here's why because when weight loss is the target, keeping in mind we have a very obese society. Right now, we are the most obese society that's ever existed on planet Earth. Right now, you and I, Dan, are living in this. And it's sad because it doesn't need to be like that. So we know that it's a problem if you have excess weight. You know it's a problem. So these things are very enticing and very attractive and very alluring. Makes sense. But when you just take those things under the premise of reducing calorie intake would cause you to lose weight, and therefore that's a good thing, that's disastrous because the calorie theory has been completely busted wide open. It's not accurate because we have different levels of bacteria, different styles of bacteria between intra-human beings, meaning you could eat a food, I could eat a food, my wife could eat a food, good food, and we might yield different potential caloric output because the way we break it down. So we see a lot of people today, a lot. It's become very trendy in Hollywood because I'm kind of connected in that area a little bit. And it's very trendy to be this bone thin, rail thin person, but it is not healthy. Muscle loss, again, fat gain. When you lose muscle, you lose mobility later in life. I'm concerned about that, osteoporosis, brain health, heart health, at all. I think they're all concerning right now.
Yeah, I've seen the statistics. I've gone and researched it, and you'll see that somebody may start off with a BMI that says that they're obese. They then turn around, take their GLP 1s, their weight drops 60 pounds, yet
Mhm.
the fat levels in their body have actually increased.
Yep.
So now instead of being at 50% body fat, they're now at a 65% body fat, but they're happy because they're judging on what was like you said about Hollywood, the ideology of being thin, skinny,
Mm.
lighter. And this was what was fascinating to me. Do you know which the healthiest cultures in the world are? Which is the healthiest continent right now?
I don't, no.
It's Africa.
Wow, go
And,
figure.
and this was all the studies that I went and researched. It's because it's the least affected by modern medicine, food. They're still much healthier. They spend more time in the sun. They're
Yep.
exercising, moving more. They don't have the convenience and the luxury of what we have in America. And as such, there's not a drug market there in the same way for
Mm.
health. They're out moving. So it was fascinating. Continuing on with the GLP-1, there's a new drug coming out, retatrutide, that
Mhm.
is meant to be through the Lilly found or company, it's meant to have a whole different effect than Ozempic. It's meant to hit the visceral fat, which is the fat around our organs, a little bit more. What are your thoughts on that? Because they said it's going to be the first $1 trillion peptide ultimately.
Well, I know that one quite well because I've used all of these things. People need to know my wife and I have a methodology in our I don't call it a practice in our business, right? We don't practice anything, we do it. So everything goes through our bodies, through our minds, through our hearts, through our discussion, through our research, through our prayer before we ever roll it out to people. So I know retatrutide well. We have it. We use it quite a bit. It does have an extra mechanism of inhibitory action against fat gain. It does have another angle of action in addition to the GLP-1s. So I suppose it could be a little bit more potent, let's say. But it goes back to the same premise. If people are using that to lose weight and they believe that they take more and shut off the ability to eat under the idea that calories bad, food makes one fat, it's going to be disaster. But I would agree with the statement. It probably will be the first $1 trillion drug because you've got a society right now that is just nothing more than slaves to a system that does nothing more than want to profit off of them. I mean, you got a whole industry right now, and I'll say it one more time because for emphasis, that uses sickness to profit. To me, that is psychotic and sick and twisted and frankly evil.
Yeah, I don't know if you know Dr. Patrick Porter with Brain Tap. Great guy, but I loved when I saw him speak on stage and he said, "We don't have a healthcare system, we have a health sick system."
Yep.
I think it hit it right on the head.
Mhm.
So we've talked a lot about the negative potential that can come from it. And with you, with your physique, bodybuilding, athlete background, which is so admirable and you keep it there as part of the mindset. Let's talk about solutions for people. So I'm overweight or I want to lose more body fat. There has to be a lifestyle inclusion. What would you suggest people do? And again, it's not about necessarily going to the gym because it's movement in everyday life. But what would you say? Okay, you're going to take Ozempic, you're going to take retatrutide, you're going to take say, but this is what you need to give me a platform that people listening could say, okay, I can start that before I even take the peptide, knowing that I'm preparing my body and then continuing on the potential success.
Well, there's two things to keep in mind. Those things can be very, very useful as the analogy of a training wheels on a bicycle, learning how to ride the bike. So let's talk about lifestyle. Lifestyle might be learning how to ride a bike with good balance. And once you know how to ride a bike, you always know how to ride a bike. It just becomes comfortable. You know what you're doing. Retatrutide, tirzepatide, um, semaglutide, all of those can be used in forms of training wheels to ensure you get your balance right. You can turn off the food noise that's perhaps inappropriate. And we use those a lot under the standpoint of telling people, back to our stomach, when you cut down the amount of food that you're eating and you speed up that signal that says, I'm full, as an example, it is becoming more critical than ever to ensure you have high nutrient density foods because you need the micronutrients from the macronutrients to go down to the cell level and combine with oxygen at the mitochondrial level and make energy for the body to use for life, right? So, with that said, when a person does that, not if, but when they work with us, that's what they're going to do. Great food. We're going to use these things in very, very, very small microdosing that's personalized to just take the noise off, take the edge off, training wheel type. They're going to see their fat tissue go down. They are going to move more. So we're going to see their muscle tissue go up. We might use peptides at the same time that help instill and increase muscle tissue, increase repair, and drop body fat. So you can use those things concurrently, and they get their whole life turned around. All of a sudden, their body fat percentage begins to drop. They get motivated. And just like negative momentum, there's a positive momentum. And they start believing in themselves again. They start believing in the possibilities and start living in hope. And that's kind of the proper way to do that. And that's not something that every single human being today doesn't have access to because we do, thank the Lord. So those are things that people can do today. Now, with that said, one caveat, a lot of times people want quote unquote insurance to pay for these drugs or these peptides. And insurance can, but that's going to cost you something. It costs you a diagnosis code, and people don't think about that. That diagnosis code that the doctor slaps on you in that system could be obesity, it could be metabolic syndrome, whatever that is, type 2 diabetes. When you get that reversed, that code is still there for the rest of your days, like a bad tattoo, maybe a tattoo of an ex-wife or ex-husband right on your forehead. You can't get it off. And what's that gonna mean for your insurance premiums and expenses and what the government does for you in the future? I think God only knows, but the prices are gonna go up for you. So you wanna find someone that can work with you probably on a cash pay basis, and those can be used in a beneficial way. You can actually make some good headway with that.
That's great information because nobody really talks about that.
Mm.
And people fear the cash
Yep.
direction because they think they're going to lose. But I have this theory from research, people will spend about 70% of their life giving up their health to earn
Mhm.
money.
Oh, yeah.
And then the last 30% of their life spending all the money they earn to try and gain their health, which is one of the most valuable things we have. But you can have both, especially if you look at it as action over time, not immediate results. It's fascinating what we can do.
Eh, I'll give you a couple example of that, like, obviously, you kinda hit on it. What you invest today in your health pays off dividends for weeks, months, years, decades in advance, right? Like a compounding interest that you can guarantee with. It's better than the stock market. You're gonna get compounding interest on that that's gonna provide more equity, wellness equity in this analogy, as opposed to compared to one night in the hospital, average in America is about $5,000 a night. Would you rather stay in a Ritz-Carlton at about half that, or would you rather stay in a hospital room? It is more expensive to be sick, much, much more. And then you mentioned we spend all of our life working hard and we reach that last time and a sickness and death and all that stuff sort of accumulates to death. But that last 10 years, the whole system will put you in a home and charge exorbitant rates for terrible care. And they will take everything you've got. So you don't have anything left over anyway. So I'm going to tell people don't play by those rules. Don't play by those expectations. Set your own rules. Make your own expectations. Make your way so you can be a blessing in your life, but you can be a blessing to others that are in your life as well.
Yeah, hitting on that point, I have to share this. I went to a home care setup where people come in, they're not going into your home, you're going into what they call their home.
Yeah.
And I have my total balance system. I got over 70,000 people to use it for mobility, for balance regaining, because we know movement is part of health. And I went and met with them and I said, look, we got this program. We're taking people out of wheelchairs to walk again. We got people off of canes, off of walkers. I'd love to bring it into your system, into your
Mhm.
home where all the people, the residents there can use it. And they didn't want to bring it in because they didn't want them to leave. They said, if we make them
No.
better, they'll leave. Our job ultimately is to keep them alive as long as we can, dependent on us, which means they keep the revenue because if somebody dies too quickly, they got to find someone else. And if they
Oh,
leave,
yeah.
you've got an empty bed. So the whole point being here, invest in yourself, exactly what you're saying, Dr. Mark. It pays off dividends, but I would also add, it builds a character within the person to step up and do the work. Because if I've invested in myself, I'm also more willing and not waiting for someone
Mm.
to save me.
Yeah, it's funny, when people come to us, we gave up, when we first started the Functional Medical Institute, a decade and a half ago, we probably had 10%, 15% of our, clients still doing insurance, and probably a year and a half into that, this is maybe 12 years ago, I suppose, at this point, we got a reimbursement check, no kidding, from an insurance company, I'll leave their name out, for 1 penny. 1 penny. I didn't know they wrote checks for 1 penny. When I got that, that was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. I looked at my wife and I said, "Sweetheart, I really think it's time. It's time to cut this thing off forever because it's nothing more than a rip-off scam system." And her response, obviously, from coming from that system, "Well, what about the people? Won't they go somewhere else?" They might. They might. But what we're cutting off is getting us nowhere, and it's getting them nowhere. They're getting worse. And she agreed. We cut that off. And then there was a little bit of complaint with that 10%, but not the 90%. They were fine. They were doing what they always did. But I learned something in that time frame. If someone buys season tickets, for example, to go see the Los Angeles Rams, you got season tickets, you're going to go to those Rams games even if it's raining because you pay for that. You want to get your money's worth. You got skin in the game. And I realize when people put skin in the game and they invest in that, they're going to get their money's worth as compared and opposed to insurance. They got no perceived skin in the game. They didn't write that check. They don't pull out that credit card. And so people that do invest, they get so much more out of that. They get not only satisfaction, but they get an exponential return on investment. And people like my wife and we pour everything we got into that. So they'll go, "Man, those people delivered way more than I ever thought possible." Not just tangible, but also intangibles.
Yeah, nothing great comes easy and
No.
nothing great is free. That's the bottom line.
Mhm.
Give me your final take before we move on peptides. What would you want everyone to know to try? And I'm not talking about the name of the peptide, but
Mhm.
why should people seriously look into this and avoid what their doctors and what the media on the big pharma side are telling them?
Well, you gotta look at those facts I talked about earlier. They're not doing their job, so why would you listen to somebody that's failed so bad? Why would you go to a financial advisor that's trillions and trillions of dollars in debt themselves? That don't make any sense, right? Why would you go to a doctor that has a bunch of sick people, right? So, I think that's a safe bet to stay away from people that don't even follow their own advice and are bad at what they do, right? When you look at peptides, remember they're natural substances. Is it a wild, wild west out there right now? Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of people that are trying a lot of things, but you can't knock them for trying things. They're trying to do better because they realize that system is no good. It's not doing the job towards increasing someone's health span. It's creating more increase of sick span. So people are tired of that, and they're doing the best they can with that. So I admire them for trying. Are they FDA approved a lot of times? Nope, but there are some that are just for disease conditions. For example, one peptide, just to prove my point, testosterone, which is a growth hormone releasing hormone peptide. Very effective, but it's approved for HIV muscle wasting. Sounds good. You can use that off label if you choose to for some other condition. You just can't say it's directly affected this condition, and therein lies a problem. In our system, we're set up from a negative standpoint. We have to have disease, and something has to treat the disease to become approved through the system. But how do you measure a well person wanting to be more well? Well, that's not what they do. So there's a lot of people out there doing them. I think people should seek out information, ask their doctor if they use them, what they've learned, what they know, interview patients, interview clients of those doctors. Be a little cautious of just buying research peptides out there. It's a little bit concerning without certificates of analysis. They're out there, but you can get them. Just be more in tune with it and be willing to go down pathways like this with trusted people. And I think there's a lot to be determined out there in the future, but I'm excited about the opportunity that we have with peptides. I think they're phenomenal and great. Somebody had to experiment somewhere. I mean, somebody had to learn it. Why can't it be us? Why can't we learn it so other people can benefit? I think there's a win-win for us out there.
I agree 100%. Just got to ask, I see a lot of peptides being advertised now on social media, Facebook, and everywhere you look, someone's now got their supplier from China. How do people break it down
Yeah.
and say, how do I know what I'm buying is what I'm getting? How do you find the right people like yourself, like Dr. Michelle, who truly know what they're talking about and you're going to get what you're paying for? Because when someone says we got the cheapest peptides on the market, people
Yeah.
jump in. It's dangerous.
It can be because you just don't know what you're getting. A couple things that people need to know is when you buy a research only peptide, they're going to have a caveat on there that says not for human use. It might be okay. It might be pure. It might be awesome. And if it's not, and you take that, the joke's on you. You just got a bad batch, right? So, I think you need to explore that a little bit. Search out certificates of analysis. And in both cases, we use suppliers that are for physician use only, so we can prescribe those, right? And we got certificates of analysis available for all of ours. We actually are those people that go down to a lab and make the company pay for it. And we visit that and we explore it and we ask questions and we go there. We're always looking for different suppliers that will allow us to do that. We avoid the ones that won't, right? So it's just common sense at this point. And, you want to kind of avoid people that are just out there trying to make a buck based upon the current landscape right now. Once RFK and the FDA kind of pulled that curtain back a little bit to open up more peptides for research purposes, that was the floodgates again in the last couple of months to see all these new ones coming out. So opportunities for people to make money, I suppose, that's free market, but also opportunities for some bad products as well. So we need to be cautious.
Yeah, look for quality. I actually have a product coming out, has MOTS-C and
Mm.
EC 157 in it, for gut health and then obviously brain health as well. But very excited. But I went down to the manufacturer, the genius that I work with, and I saw him personally throw out over $100,000 worth of material because they do testing within there to make sure it's the purity and the quality that is protested. They proclaim it to be. And he said, we won't sell anything that doesn't have the quality. And ultimately, they'll send it back to the manufacturer, who then will have to replace it with high quality. But no, they can't pass that off onto a high quality manufacturer or formulator. We're going to move on to something which is so dynamic, hormone therapy, hormones. But before we get there, I just want to touch on one thing that you brought up. You use the three letters that everyone trusts but realize they shouldn't. FDA. People think if it's FDA approved, if it's FDA, endorsed, that it means that it's legit and it's real. Tell us your experience.
Well, I mean, the FDA, let's think about what those letters mean. Food and Drug Administration. What does food, real food, and drugs have in common? Nothing. Nothing at all. So FDA approval needs to be looked at with a little bit of a crooked eye, I would say, a little bit of skepticism. Now, granted, you want some sort of an oversight and governing, bodies in regard to stuff that's sort of put into the population under the idea of trying to protect them. So I'm all about that. But this one, when you have them under the same roof, that leads to potential conflict of interest. We have food that is approved for human consumption right now that clearly is carcinogenic and obesogenic. Right now, we have a problem right now with drugs who go through these FDA approval processes, but as stated, they're not starting from the standpoint of a well person, but they're going from a standpoint of disease conditions. So we have this multiplying effect. More diseases, more studies, more drugs approved for more conditions, more studies, more diseases, more drugs, and it goes on and on and on. It's not going to go away. RFK is not going to change that because all the politicians accept money from Big Pharma. That's the way that works. Big Pharma advertises to us as Americans on television, radio, and through media. We are one of two countries on planet Earth that allow that, us and New Zealand, as best I know. We could stop that, but we won't because money talks. So I tell people to look at the FDA approval process with a little bit of a question mark. Understand where it comes from, understand the whys behind it, and then do your own research. Again, if things can't be patented sometimes, as you mentioned earlier, as drugs and money can be made, you're not going to see those in studies. You're not going to see an avocado studied. You're not going to see a salad and a piece of salmon studied against a Big Mac and fries. You won't see that. I mean, we know the results would be bad for the Big Mac and fries, but you won't see that because it disrupts this current system. So that's a big answer to a short question, but hopefully it paints a good picture of the way people need to start actually looking at that with a bit of skepticism.
I actually would say that's a short answer because I know we could go much deeper into it. And
Yeah.
my own personal experience with my balance training system, I wanted to be FDA approved. And so I went in, started the process, having to prove everything that I'm claiming the balance board to be and showing the science behind it and the whole system. It cost me $35,000 just to go in and do
Mm.
and submit the research. So I got FDA registered.
Yeah.
And they came at me and said, if you want to get approved, it's going to cost you about $2 million, but we can speed that up if you pay more,
Oh, yeah.
get it through. And at that point, I realized it's those with money. I couldn't afford to do it. Those with money can push through faster in the system and get the approval just for money. That is never a standard that says
No.
what you're getting is a real label of approval. It's so,
Well, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you just saw this recent, political climate is a lot of that's done by political favors too. They can push things through depending on who asks and who needs it, and, we've had a heck of a journey with the mRNA technology, et cetera, and now psychedelics, and I mean, it goes on and on and on both sides of the coin, so, it's like, I don't trust the system myself at all, and, I think you don't either for good reason. We both experience it from different angles, so I think people need to, heed the warnings, right? And do your own research, and trust your common sense, trust your gut, trust the wisdom that God gives us.
And listen to real people
Yeah,
that have gone through it that have no money in the push. That's why I love with our testimonials, and I know with your clients as well, we don't pay for one. We don't pay anybody to say anything because then there's no incentive. You're only going to tell the truth. And when you have success, you want to share that to others, both as inspirational and to show things can be better. So
correct.
let's jump on to something that I know is so dynamic for you and for your wife as well. Hormone
Mhm.
therapy. What's really happening in the body because we push to the drugs or to the take it in either the testosterone or estrogen, we push it, but go to the root foundation.
Well, obviously, hormones are chemical messengers that deliver messages. Look at hormones like the standpoint of emails. Most of them are sent from the pituitary gland, which is up here in the brain. I call this your CEO, right? If your CEO is trying to communicate with different corporate divisions, or maybe, listen this analogy, the different organ systems, the CEO may send emails to say, "Hey, can you do this for me?" And then the system would respond, and "Yes, I can." And output comes, the feedback loop comes back. So this feedback loop and email system is going on all the time. Hormones do communicate with each other. Our adrenal hormones communicate with our sex steroid hormones, communicate with our thyroid hormones, et cetera, et cetera. And as time goes on in life, the aging process is accumulation of maybe lessened effective communication or lessened effective signaling to bring about this structure of presence of hormones. When a lady reaches a certain time in life and loses hormone productions, we call that menopause, or her menstrual cycles pause, and then her hormone production goes down off a cliff. That's about 50 or 51. For men, there's a phenomenon that we call andropause, or facetiously refer to that as menopause, right? Menopause. You see the difference, right? And so as they decline over time, we're seeing that declination of testosterone becoming faster and faster today. You're seeing menopause move back, you're seeing andropause move back, and you're also seeing puberty moved back about 10 years in the last 100 years. You're seeing little boys today having a hard time producing sufficient testosterone, but they're producing estrogen. They're getting the little man boobs at a younger age. You're seeing obesity go, and all that is hormone confusion. You're getting hormones in the environment. You're getting false hormone processes or fake or false hormones that are binding to receptors. And so, we need to understand the hormones very well. Replacement is also something that's very valid. There's two types of replacement. There's synthetic or patentable things, right? We talked about that. And then there's bioidentical, which are more human identical. They hit the receptors better, but to which we are very much fans of those.
What is that? Tell me about the bioidentical.
So when you look at hormones, on the top of our cells, there are receptors. Look at those like buckets, right? So in the bloodstream where hormones are passed through, these buckets are waiting for something to dock at the docking station. Email coming along here, got it. It's at the bay and it goes inside the cell and we get some sort of nuclear reaction from that to create a protein or something, right? So hormones hit on these receptors. There are synthetic hormones that are created in a lab. They're not exactly what the human body creates, but they're close enough. They might hit on the receptors like this. My fingers come together. It's not a complete fit, but it hits on the receptors enough. But I got some things out here that are probably not part of a normal hormone process. Maybe hormones that are not really, or structures of hormones that are not really like humans. What do? Well, studies have shown what they potentially can do, which is increase risk of blood clots, cancers, etc. Now, there's another category of hormones. These are all produced in a lab, by the way, that are structured from nature. They're typically from soy or yams, and they're made exactly where they hit on the receptors just like a glove. Boom. So we call those bioidentical or human identical. They hit exactly on receptors. So they exactly match your body's own communication processes. So that's the main difference between those two things.
Cream is a go-to for estrogen, for other ways to impact and absorb through the skin into the blood system to then get hormones into there. Progesterone, alternating or combining relative to the cycle of the woman. And I'm talking specifically about women right now.
Mhm.
Going there. Two questions. Is cream the best way for support of hormone? I don't want to say replacement, but I guess it's a form of it as it's diminishing. We replace what's diminishing. And then what would happen if somebody else, for example, if I touch somebody or get that cream on me, how does that affect the man within a relationship if a woman's taking it?
Well, obviously, if a woman's taken you got cross contamination, they put a cream on, didn't wash their hands or didn't or you touched them in that spot, you could get cross contamination. With a male, it probably wouldn't do a whole lot because it's such a relatively small amount of hormones, specifically testosterone, you would notice it a bit. But if it's a little bit of estradiol, it wouldn't be a big deal because you probably would metabolize it. Having said that, regarding cream, oral, injectable, pellets, we know all of those things. It depends. Oral estradiol, as a matter of fact, has been shown to be ultra protective for ladies for heart, brain, and bone disease over time, but it has about a 1% potential for causing a clot if it's in the first year. So, having said all of that, what did I just say? If you've been taking oral estradiol for the period of 1 year or more, it becomes more increasingly protective, right? As compared opposed to synthetic estrogen, which becomes more non-protective or more carcinogenic potential. Synthetic progesterone is one that's combined often with these synthetic estrogens, which is found in birth control. They're very dangerous. Those are not recommended, but we give them out like candy. When we use cream, we use a lot of those. We typically will combine estradiol and testosterone in that cream, and we find that that's very controllable with dose because you can manipulate that a lot. It's compounded or made specifically for that human being that you have in front of you based on what they need. And there is, at least literature tells us, there's no clot risk whatsoever with oral estradiol or with cream estradiol. Now, again, people in medicine might get that all confused because for them, bioidentical estradiol might be the same as synthetic estrogen in their minds. They may not know the difference, right? Because, a lot of our papers don't delineate the differences. When it comes to progesterone, we do prefer oral bioidentical progesterone because that does give a protection against, in some studies, breast cancer. And it also does assist undoubtedly with sleep and anxiety. So, from our standpoint, those are our most of the time go-tos.
So let's really get down to it. A lady comes into you, she's gone or going through perimenopause. She's now turning 50, very healthy, but feels this emotional change, feels this struggle that's beginning to come on. Would you do blood tests? Would you then turn around and say, this is what we need to be attacking as far as dosages? And then let's follow along with how you're feeling day to day. And then we're going to adjust it. What would you advise that 50-year-old lady?
Well, you first of all need to assess where they are, like with emotions, symptoms right now, because it's all about the human being. Who is sitting in front of you? Blood testing does give you an idea of what's passing through the blood at that time. Someone 50, if they're not on hormones at all and haven't been, because the perimenopausal processes typically begins about 15 years prior to menopause. That's what we see. But at that point in time, they've already lost pretty much all of their progesterone, and they're going to be having a difficult time sleeping. Weight gain has already started to shoot up. They're starting to get a little moody because nobody likes to be extra fat. Let's face it. And then finally, their testosterone's starting to go down, and they're not liking the extra weight, so that's affecting their libido. That's affecting their muscle tissue going down, and the fat weight's going up, and composition's not getting better. But in that case, that person, we would, check their blood, talk to them, make sure they understood. If they had any questions, we have a good communication process with them. Then we would craft a hormone, protocol for them, and we'd start them on it. And we start them with this premise always, we do. We start low and go slow, intentionally too low and too slow, because ultimately the receptors I mentioned earlier, this is fascinating. We don't know how to test the sensitivity of those receptors yet in lab work. So we've all sent emails to somebody and send the email, somebody's right on it, man. They answer that email. You're like, wow, thank you for being such promptness in your response. That would be like a sensitive receptor waiting for that hormone. Where you been all my life? My love, that kind of thing. You get a response from that. So a little bit in that area works. But what about an email sent to someone they don't answer for 3 days? You send more emails. In that case, you increase the dose of testosterone or estradiol or whatever the case may be, or progesterone, and you bring it up to where the receptors can see it. And that's the way that works. And usually, if you have a sensitive receptor person, over time, a little bit works. Sometimes the receptor gets fully engaged and it becomes less sensitive. So you have to kind of slowly increase the dose. But it's all about symptom management. It's all about reversal of symptoms, not just managing them. And then usually we test the blood work again in about 10 or 12 weeks to see what we've got. If they reach out to us and say, man, Mark, Dr. Michelle, man, I'm feeling awesome. I'm saying, let's do a lab right now because I want to know what awesome looks like for them. We don't chase ranges, we chase effects. Hormones, if properly prescribed, studies have shown, become ultra protective against brain, bone, and heart disease. So that's why we do them, and that's how we check them.
Great advice. It sounds like you're so on it, caring about the patient or the client rather than just following protocols. This is, personalized medicine to a certain extent. I shouldn't even use the word medicine, but it's
Yeah.
we see it as. What should people not do? Someone watching this saying, okay, I want to go get tested or I've been taking it. What's the warning? Because we always talk about what you should do. What shouldn't you do?
Well, you shouldn't just go to someone that just does hormones. I am not a fan of the spas, the men's clinics, and all that because they don't look around the corners. That is not complete care. Hormones are just one sliver of the puzzle. You have peptides, you have supplements, you have overall inflammatory cascades, you got vitamin levels, you got inflammatory levels, you got blood chemistries to look at. You got to look at the whole person. Hormones cannot solve, I'll say it like this. Hormones can't solve the national debt. They can't solve the border crisis, and they can't do other things. They're not designed to help you lose weight or make you a rock star in the bedroom. They're marketed like that, granted, and people buy them. But those type of things, you need to shy away and find someone that's going to give you total holistic care. And when that happens, you will find that the hormones become one of the most important pieces of that puzzle towards the endeavor of creating a nice health existence and a better health span over the course of time.
When someone goes through the training, I shouldn't say the training, but once they start going through the whole process, which is partly training as well with lifestyle
Yep.
and improvement, how long will they have to stay on that hormone therapy the rest of their life? Or is there a time where they go, okay, I'm doing great. My body's now fully functioning. I now can cut back or I can let go.
Super question. Get that all the time. So when a lady reaches menopause, because of the factors of the lack of response from the ovaries, from the brain signal, the hormones, we don't produce them efficiently and we won't. We're done. Men, same kind of process. Because keep in mind, Dan, the loss of hormones is really production, is really an environmental factor. We can't take you out of the world, unfortunately. So hormones do not build up in the system and mount up and stay. They come in, they're metabolized, and they're back out. So persons would ask the question, do I, quote, have to, end quote, take these the rest of my life? The answer to that question is, of course not. Another question that's not posed a lot of times, do I get to take these the rest of my life to purposely get protection against brain, bone, and heart disease? You can. Absolutely. In both cases, if it's a lady that just decides one day, I don't want to take them, she goes back to zero. If it's a man, and the symptoms will come back, by the way. If it's a man and he's on that andropausal decline, he can stop taking them any time and he'll go right back to the natural decline in which he was. It's very interesting how conventional medicine has saw the data and they're starting to shift a little bit. NAMS, or North American Menopause Society, used to say hormones are bad, don't take them. And then they've shifted recently. And now they say, well, you can take hormones for the first 5 years after menopause, but after 5 years, stop taking them. Where does 5 years come in? I have no idea. Sounds like an arbitrary number. It probably is. And ladies will take them for 5 years. The doctor said, get off, and bam, the symptoms return again. So it's kind of like the 6 feet rule back in COVID. Who thought of that? Why not was it 6 feet 2 inches, and why wasn't it 5 feet 6 inches? In this case with the NAMS, why isn't it 5 years and 2 months versus 4 years? I don't know. So, but they are beneficial. Studies have shown us that. And with men specifically and women, we've known this for a while that men and women with higher testosterone levels have a higher quality of life, and a higher health span.
Yeah, you bring up something that, and you've said this word now probably 10 times in the last 5 minutes, men. We never address really
No.
hormone changes in men and it's left behind. We always focus on the female. And with TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, there's so much that shows positivity.
Mm,
Take us through roughly why do we drop the testosterone? Because you've already talked about even in young boys now,
yeah.
going into puberty and the delays and the lack of
Mm,
testosterone being produced. But also we used to call it mid-age, midlife crisis, right? Where
yeah.
people go through because they weren't feeling the same.
Yeah.
Take us through a man's journey.
Well, obviously, we used to call it midlife crisis, where the little man would get his red Corvette so he could feel younger and more attractive again. But really, it's a loss of hormone production. realizing your age, thinking about mortality, all of that kind of stuff. And men are providers, and they realize they're maybe at a peak of their earning potential and going toward decline in their earning potential. I mean, all those things factors should come in. Then they've let themselves go, and they've got obese or insulin resistant, and that complicates the effect of hormones production and it minimizes as well. But when a man goes through that, they can go in the pits of depression. They can start to treat their loved ones horribly and themselves horribly and look for some young thing out there to make them feel better. You can see all that happening, and that's men. I mean, women are a little different, obviously, but when men go through that, they need to get some good counsel and realize that it's possibly a decline in hormones. And men, Dan, are notoriously reactive in their health as opposed to proactive. They're notorious about rehabilitation as opposed to prehabilitation. Men need to lead the way. I'm hard on men because I am one. And I challenge men to be men today, to lead your families in not just the way you make money and bring it home, but lead your families in health, including making sure your hormones are there so you can stay engaged for your family, man, keep your brain alive and your bones alive and not get fat and keep your muscle tissue and mobility on. So it's super important for men to really get in the game, so to speak, and not follow these jackassery commercials that say, "Take this supplement" by these movie stars and force it to raise your testosterone. It doesn't work like that. Good sales techniques, but you wanna find a doctor to work with to help you get your levels to at least a place where they can be functional again as far as being able to send and receive messages. I saw a guy just this week in his upper 30s. His testosterone was 183. 183. And again, his wife's on the Zoom with him, and they are concerned for good reason, and he's a hardworking guy, a sweet man, loving wife, great family, but they could see it spinning out of control. And she wanted her husband back, and we're gonna give him his life back, I hope.
I'm sure you will. And again, the first step is going searching for help to
Yeah.
solve the problem. Everything I believe in life has a solution. It's not always the quick fix. In fact, very rarely it's the quick fix, but everything has a solution if you're willing to go find it and do the work. How much of is psychological a decrease in testosterone for men?
Quite a bit. You look at the idea of, all hormones are constructed from cholesterol. So if cholesterol is the backbone of everything and you're producing a lot of cortisol because of stress, etcetera, well, that would make sense. Cortisol is gonna have to be produced from cholesterol. So if you're running from a bear trying to eat you or chasing the deal to deal and trying to run your business, all of your cholesterol being produced is shifted over here to the threat of losing everything, the threat of gaining everything, the threat of not having something, whatever the case may be. And it shifts away from the production of your other hormones, inclusive of testosterone. So there's a bunch of it that's tied there to the emotional level. And many times by the time men get into this area, they've had years and years and years of that bombardment of stuff. And today, in our world of social media and connectivity, we have things going on all the time, and we're producing cortisol all day long. So I think that's probably contributed to the global decline, perhaps, in testosterone production in men, and they lose it at an earlier age.
Yeah, I did some talks with some specialists actually specializing in ED, erectile dysfunction. And they were talking about how people will go and jump onto a pill to try and increase blood flow to
Yep.
about, but a vast majority actually come from psychological inferiority,
Mhm.
where they're beginning to feel less, they can't perform. That increases the reaction of ED. And then you then lose your confidence, your pride, all these different things that come in. Is that possible to replace with hormone therapy? That again, now you're not judging yourself against maybe a younger guy, a fitter looking guy, those
Yeah.
type of things where you just feel less, but you get the hormone therapy. Will you begin to feel, because of the change, that you're back being the man you want to be?
Yeah, many times you do. Keeping in mind what I said earlier, you wanna look at everything involved because, let's talk about ED for a second. When we people have that, it messes with your head because you think you can't perform anymore. You think you're letting your wife down. You feel less of a male. You don't wake up with morning erections as much as you once did. Maybe you get an erection in the middle of intercourse and lose it. And those are psychological bombs that are dropped on you over the course of time because, oh, you're getting older, something's wrong with you. You can go all through this scripting in your head. But keeping in mind the penis, for example, is at the end of a circulation chain. A lot of things happen. The brain is dependent on these hormones to have in there. So bringing those back will definitely help some areas. But if you don't address the vascular system and it's all gunked up with plaque and blood sugar, and you have a lot of glycation on your red blood cells, your hemoglobin A1C is out of sight, you're insulin resistant, you're not going to take enough hormones to fix that. Now, sometimes there's a valve at the base of the penis that's it's called phosphodiesterase, and it actually gets a little bit leaky. Sometimes we get leaky valves, and sometimes you take medications like Cialis, Viagra, Tadalafil, et cetera, and compounds therein that will help close the valve. Meaning when you get that blood flow in the penis, it will close that valve, slam it shut until you have an orgasm, and then it will open it up, and the penis gets less erect at that point. So it's all things involved. But to your point, hormones are critical for that. Critical for that. Not only do they help with that process, but they also help with the mindset because now you feel like, at least sense you want to have sexual relations. Now you have more energy. Now you have more attraction. And I tell men to talk with their partners about this. You're not inferior. Your lady doesn't think you're inferior. She loves you like you are. Talk about it. Release the pressure that is. If you have a moment where you don't perform, you got to talk about that. And you got to let that go. Because if you still think about that, the next time, that's the first thing that's on your mind. I'm gonna fail this time. So, I talk to a lot of men about that, a lot of women about that. My wife and I do a lot of couple, kinda visits sometimes, and we have that open dialogue, and it's actually, very, very helpful because it takes the whole pressure off the whole deal, and it's really about being intimate with each other versus just chasing an orgasm, for example.
Yeah, I think it's so freeing to be able to say how you feel and
Yes.
not pretend to hide it. And one of the things that I teach at Born Superhuman is we are what we think. We go
Yeah.
where we focus on, even if we don't want to go there. It's like when I was racing bikes, you go around a bend, and I got taught by a professional very early on, look where you're going, not what's in front of you. Because if I look at what I
Exactly.
don't want to hit, I hit what I
Yeah.
don't want to hit because we hit that. And I really believe that mindset and what we're willing to invest in, again, with everything we've talked about really today, your mindset will determine where you go. And if you're not willing to do something, you won't achieve what that direction would have given you. So avoid what you don't want and focus on what you do want.
Well said. I couldn't agree more. We wanna think about health, wanna think about positive things. Don't focus in the rearview mirror of life, man. Look at the big windshield in front of you. There's a lot out there to see.
Very exciting. The best years can always be ahead.
Yes.
Dr. Mark, what would you like to end this with? What message would you like to give to anyone that spent the time listening and about them?
Well, we've talked about a lot of things from hormones and peptides and a lot of biochemical, physiological reactions. But with that said, be willing to learn. Be willing to be curious. Listen to this podcast over and over again. Let it ask you more questions. Reach out to Dan if you want more questions answered, and he'll find someone that can talk about those questions. So, curiosity is what heals the human. So, be curious, keep learning. You're not going to get it from the system. You get it from curiosity, you get it from drive, you get it from, as you said, Dan, focusing on where you want to go. So, let that be an encouragement to everyone listening today, and hope you had a good time with our conversation.
Thank you so much. And we'll drop in where people can get hold of you as well. We'll put all the links in there because obviously your knowledge, your success has come from years of not just learning, but working with people and seeing each as an individual, which I admire greatly. I did this with a guest the other day, and I hadn't done it before. I'd love to do it with you.
Yeah.
Would you come back on and answer the top 10 questions that people leave here?
Of course, I think that's outstanding. I love doing that because I can learn too, it's good. I mean, I learn from everybody, man. I get up every day and realize there's more I need to know, and, I look forward to that. That'd be a blast, yes.
Yeah, I love that because this whole podcast is about the listener. It's all about
Yeah,
serving their betterment in life in all areas we discuss. So if I could get at anybody that wants to ask Dr. Mark a question, a specific, please drop it into the comments. Leave it on social media. You know where you're going to find us there on Born Superhuman. And I'd love for you to be able to leave what you'd like to know because I trust Dr.
yeah.
Mark will come back and give you the best guidance you can get.
Look forward to that.
Thank you so much for another great episode. I look forward to getting to meet you in person very soon.
I know. You have a good day, man. I appreciate you very much, Dan.
Thanks so much. You too.